Something is deeply, systemically wrong with the meat sitting inside Australian supermarket fridges right now. And the most disturbing part is that the packaging has been specifically engineered to stop you from noticing. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on 8 specific brands, industry-wide practices, and supply chain deceptions that are costing Australian families hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. Stay with me to the very end, because after we expose every single one, I'm going to show you the alternatives that actually deserve a place in your fridge. Picture the last time you walked through the meat section of your local Coles or Woolworths. The trays are spotless. The meat is a vivid, confident red or a clean, bright pink. Everything looks perfectly fresh, perfectly safe. You load the family pack of chicken thighs into the trolley, grab the premium beef mince, toss in a few rashers of bacon, and head to the checkout feeling like you have done the right thing by your household. But here is the part that should stop you dead in your tracks. That vivid red color you trusted? It is not natural. That extra weight in the chicken tray, a significant portion of it is injected saltwater, sold to you at meat prices. The word premium on your beef mince. It has no legal definition in Australia whatsoever. It means absolutely nothing. And the bacon you bought believing it was Australian, one of the biggest names in the country, has already been dragged into court and fined for labelling imported Danish and Canadian pork as a product of Australia. This is not one bad batch. This is not one rogue supplier. This is a system running across every major chain simultaneously that has quietly transformed Australian supermarket meat into one of the most engineered, manipulated, and legally exploited food categories in the country. Australians spend over $26 billion a year on supermarket meat. We believe, with genuine national pride, that we live in one of the greatest meat-producing countries on earth. We have been told our entire lives that Australian beef is world-class, that our chicken is clean, our pork is local, our lamb is raised on open pastures under wide blue skies, and for a long time, much of that was true. But the system changed. The major supermarkets grew so powerful that they compressed the price paid to Australian farmers to the absolute minimum. Processing facilities centralised, moving away from in-store butchers to massive off-site factories. Supply chains stretched, meaning meat now travels further, sits longer, and needs more chemical intervention to maintain the appearance of freshness. Imports quietly entered the supply chain while the labels continued to wave the Australian flag. And a generation of shoppers simply trusted the packaging because it looked clean. It felt professional, and it came from a store they had been visiting their whole lives. We were not paying attention, and the industry counted on exactly that. Let us pull back the curtain on what is really happening to the meat in your trolley right now. Number 1. Modified atmosphere packaging and the carbon monoxide color trick. This first issue does not belong to a single brand. It runs across every major chain in Australia. Coles, Woolworths, Aldi and IGA, all of them. And it involves a gas that the European Union formally banned from meat packaging back in 2005, citing concerns about hidden spoilage risk. Here is what is actually happening inside the tray of red meat you put in your trolley. Australian supermarkets use a process called modified atmosphere packaging. Inside every sealed tray of red meat, a carefully calculated mixture of gases is pumped in before the tray is sealed. That mixture typically includes oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and critically, up to 0.5% carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide binds permanently to the myoglobin proteins in the surface of the meat, locking in a vivid cherry red color. And here is the devastating part. It locks in that color for up to 21 days after slaughter. 21 days. Your meat can be 3 weeks old and still look as red and fresh as the day it was cut. The color of meat has been the fundamental, universal, instinctive indicator of freshness for the entire history of human food preparation. When meat goes brown, grey and dull, your body tells you to put it back. That biological warning system has now been chemically overridden. Respected independent Australian expert Ingrid Just publicly noted that supermarkets are using carbon monoxide specifically to prolong the redness of their meat so that it appears fresher than it actually is. The European Union reached the same conclusion and banned the practice. Australia has not followed suit. So why does this matter to you personally? Because you are making food safety decisions for your family based on a visual cue that has been deliberately engineered to give you the wrong information. The vivid red steak in the tray is not evidence of freshness, it is evidence of chemistry. The sealed tray with its bold use-by date promises farm-fresh Australian beef at the peak of its quality, but the carbon monoxide inside that tray quietly ensures. The color you see has no relationship to how long this meat has actually been sitting in a supply chain. And if you think the color trick is the only way they are misleading you, number 2 is going to make you look at that chicken in your fridge very differently. Number 2. Water-injected chicken at Coles and Woolworths. Australia's 2 biggest supermarket chains are currently selling you saltwater at chicken prices, and they are doing it completely legally. This process is called plumping or enhancing. It has been quietly standard practice in the Australian poultry industry since the 1970s. Here is exactly how it works. After the chickens are slaughtered and processed, they are run through high-pressure injection machines. These machines drive a brine solution, water heavily loaded with salt and sometimes phosphate compounds, deep into the muscle tissue of the bird. The result? A significantly heavier bird, a more visually plump, appealing tray, and a product that looks, on the shelf, like exceptional value for money, but the numbers tell a very different story. Choice Australia's independent testing found some supermarket chicken containing up to 18% added water above the natural baseline. Other independent research cited that plumping can add between 15 and 30% of the total tray weight as injected brine. What does this mean for you financially? If you buy a 2-kilogram pack of chicken breast from Woolworths for $20 and 15% of that weight is injected salt water, you are paying $3 of that $20 total for water that was injected into the meat in a processing factory. Scaled across every chicken purchase in Australia, critics point out this represents an $810 million annual transfer from Australian shoppers to supermarket shareholders. And what does it mean for your cooking? You will know it the second the chicken hits the pan. It releases an extraordinary, almost alarming amount of liquid. Instead of searing, browning and developing flavor in a hot pan, the chicken essentially boils in its own injected water. The skin will never properly crisp. The texture becomes rubbery and pallid. You end up with a sad, waterlogged piece of meat that bears almost no resemblance to the chicken you intended to cook. And there is an even more alarming dimension to this particular deception. A plumped chicken breast contains somewhere between 200 and 500 milligrams of sodium per serving from the injected brine. Non-plumped, natural chicken contains between 45 and 70 milligrams of sodium per serving. That is a difference of up to 10 times the natural sodium content, hidden in a product most Australians serve to young children every week. The labels on these products sometimes disclose this. Look for the phrases with added water, moisture infused, up to a certain percentage solution, or enhanced. But they are frequently buried in small print, and the product still presents on the shelf as straightforward fresh chicken. The fresh-looking tray promises premium quality Australian chicken, ready to cook. But the frying pan delivers a water-injected product that releases up to 300 milliliters of brine into your pan before the cooking has even begun. And if you thought you were safe switching to red meat, number 3 is going to fundamentally change how you read a beef mince label forever. Number 3. The beef mince labelled deception. Beef mince is the most purchased meat product in Australian supermarkets. You throw it in the trolley every single week without thinking twice. But researchers who surveyed Australian retail beef mince found something that should make every shopper in the country genuinely furious. They found 18 different descriptors being used on beef mince packaging across Woolworths, Coles and Aldi. Labels like premium, select, heart smart, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, extra lean and lean. They sound meaningful. They sound regulated. They sound like they represent some kind of enforceable quality standard. But here is the devastating truth. There is no legal definition for the word premium in the Australia-New Zealand Food Standards Code. No Australian law defines what premium must mean. A product labelled premium can legally contain the same fat percentage as a product labelled regular, standard, or budget. The peer-reviewed research confirmed this explicitly. Beef mince labelled premium ranged from as little as 2.2 grams of fat per 100 grams all the way up to 10 grams per 100 grams. The word premium tells you absolutely nothing about what is actually inside the tray. And there is a second layer to this deception that involves independent test results. Beef mince labelled as 3 to 5% fat has repeatedly tested above 9% fat in independent analysis, with no regulatory penalty applied. Why does this matter? Because if you are buying premium lean mince for your family's health, you are making a dietary decision based on a marketing label that has no legal meaning and no regulatory oversight whatsoever. Beyond the fat content issue, there is also the modified atmosphere packaging gas flushing problem. When mince is packaged with these gases to maintain its red appearance, it creates a specific, deeply misleading problem. The gas keeps the surface of the mince looking bright red, even as the internal structure begins to degrade. Open a pack of supermarket mince and press down on it. Look at the underside through the tray. You will frequently see a grey, oxidized internal core, while the surface remains vivid red from the gas treatment. That grey core is what the mince would look like without the chemical intervention. And here is a test that viral social media posts across Australia have independently confirmed. Cook 250 grams of supermarket mince. The volume of liquid released into the pan can be extraordinary. When one independent tester compared supermarket mince against butcher mince side by side, the supermarket mince released 290 grams of liquid during cooking, while the butcher mince released just 90 grams. Almost a third of your tray weight gone in a cloud of grey steam. The bright red premium label promises quality Australian beef with controlled fat content and premium freshness. But the pan test proves a gas-treated product where labels mean nothing legally and a third of your purchase price is liquid weight. Because what you are about to hear shows that the deception is not just about chemistry. Some of it has actually ended up in court. Number 4. Steggles and Lilydale chicken, the free-range fraud. Steggles and Lilydale are the two most recognizable chicken brands in Australia. You see Steggles on every barbecue chicken and family roast in the country. Lilydale positions itself as the ethical free-range step-up, the premium choice for families who care. Both brands are owned by the same company, Bayarder Poultry, Australia's largest privately owned poultry processor, supplying chicken to Coles, Woolworths, IGA, Aldi, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, Red Rooster, Nando's and Subway. But in 2013, the Federal Court of Australia handed down a judgment that every Australian shopper should have heard about. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission took Bayarder and its associated entity, Barter Enterprises, to the federal court over their advertising and packaging for Steggles products. The specific claim that their meat chickens were free to roam in large barns. The federal court found that Bayada and Bata engaged in false, misleading and deceptive conduct. The evidence was stark and specific. The company's own internal stocking density statistics showed that each chicken had access to floor space of less than the area of a single A4 sheet of paper. Let that image land for a moment. Every chicken in those facilities had personal space equivalent to an A4 sheet of paper, and the packaging called it free to roam. The federal court ordered Bayada and Bata to pay a total of $400,000 in civil pecuniary penalties. But the story does not end with the misleading marketing. In 2015, the Fair Work Ombudsman released formal findings of its inquiry into the Bayada Group's employment practices across its 3 poultry processing facilities. The findings detailed a deeply troubling pattern of labor exploitation, with allegations of workers clocking up to 18-hour shifts at below minimum wage through a complex subcontracting structure that attempted to insulate Bayada from direct accountability. So why does this matter to you as a shopper? Because you are paying a premium for an ethical product, trusting a label that a federal court declared to be misleading, from a company whose processing facilities were investigated for the exploitation of workers. The Lilydale label promises premium free-range chicken raised with care and space. But the federal court found chickens housed at densities giving each bird less space than an A4 sheet of paper, marketed as free to roam. And if you think the small goods aisle is safer, number 5 will make you check your bacon packaging right now. Number 5. Primo Small Goods and the Australian Bacon Lie. Primo is Australia's largest small goods manufacturer. Their bacon, ham and small goods products are on virtually every Australian breakfast table. The branding is aggressively Australian, but in June 2010, Primo was hauled before the courts and fined $433,325 in fines and legal costs, after being convicted of labelling imported pork products as Australian. The New South Wales Food Authority investigation found that Primo was processing imported pork middles, specifically Danish and Canadian pork, and labelling the finished product as product of Australia, with the declaration meat content 100% Australian. This was not a rounding error. This was not an administrative oversight. The court noted that the failures were systematic, running across a range of products, and that the company had failed to ensure proper quality control implementation. The magistrate specifically cited general deterrence as a factor in the heavy sentencing, calling the scope and seriousness of the charges significant. More than 1 ton of mislabeled imported pork product was identified, and Primo's corporate story raises further questions. The company is now owned by the Brazilian multinational JBS, one of the largest meat companies on the planet. JBS itself paid $20 million in 2021 and $25 million in 2023 to settle price-fixing allegations in the United States, though neither settlement involved an admission of wrongdoing. So why does this pattern matter to Australian consumers? Because when you buy a product labelled Australian from a brand built on Australian identity, you are trusting that label completely. And in Primo's case, a court found that trust was comprehensively broken. The Australian branding promises fresh, quality small goods made from the finest Australian pork, but the court record proves a company convicted of labelling over 1 ton of imported Danish and Canadian bacon as Australian-made product. Because what you're about to hear proves that the deception can have life-threatening consequences. Number 6. Götzinger Small Goods and the Listeria Recall of November 2025. Götzinger Small Goods is a widely trusted premium Australian brand. Their products sit in the deli section and the refrigerated small goods aisle of supermarkets and independent retailers across Queensland and New South Wales. They are premium-priced, beautifully packaged, and carry a reputation for artisan quality. But in November 2025, Food Standards Australia-New Zealand issued an urgent recall notice for 5 specific Götzinger products following the detection of Listeria monocytogenes contamination. The specific products recalled were sliced silverside 1 kilogram, champagne ham sliced 1 kilogram, 4x4 ham sliced 1 kilogram, provincial ham sliced 1 kilogram, and sliced roast beef 1 kilogram. These products had been distributed across retail outlets and butcher shops throughout Queensland and New South Wales. Why is this so alarming? Because Listeria monocytogenes is not simply an unpleasant stomach bug. It is a serious, potentially life-threatening bacterial pathogen. It is particularly dangerous for pregnant women, where it can cause miscarriage, stillbirth, and serious illness in newborns. It is equally dangerous for elderly Australians, people with compromised immune systems, and anyone undergoing cancer treatment or immunosuppressive therapy. The key issue the recall highlights for all Australians is the fundamental vulnerability of the deli and sliced meat category. These are ready-to-eat products. They are not cooked again before consumption. They go directly from the supermarket fridge onto a board, onto a plate, and into your family's mouth. There is no safety net, no final cooking step to kill pathogens, just your trust in the supply chain and the quality controls of the manufacturer. The premium artisan packaging promises the finest quality Australian small goods crafted for Australian tables. But the November 2025 Food Standards Australia-New Zealand recall notice proved a product that required urgent national recall due to confirmed Listeria contamination distributed across 2 states. And if you thought a major Hans product label would always be honest about where its meat comes from, Number 7 is about to reveal an inconvenient truth on their own website. Number 7, Hans Small Goods and the Offshore Sourcing Admission. Hans is one of the most recognized small goods brands in the country. Their products are in virtually every Coles, Woolworths and IGA across the nation. The branding is overwhelmingly domestic and familiar, but critics point out that Hans openly acknowledges on its own frequently asked questions pages that the brand imports pork from North America and Europe. How does this happen? Australian country of origin labelling laws require a product to be labelled made in Australia if it is substantially transformed here, even if the raw ingredient itself was grown or raised overseas. A product that uses imported Canadian or American pork, processes it in an Australian factory and packages it under an Australian brand can still legally display Made in Australia on the front of the packet. The average Australian shopper does not know this. They see the familiar logo, they see Made in Australia, and they reasonably assume they are buying Australian pork from Australian farmers. But the pork itself may have started its life on an American or Canadian farm, been slaughtered and processed overseas, shipped to Australia as a raw or semi-processed product, and then been finished and packaged here. What does this actually mean for you? It means that when you reach for a pack of Hans salami or sliced ham, thinking you are supporting Australian pig farmers, there is a genuine chance the pork inside the packet never came near an Australian paddock. The Australian flag and the familiar branding promises. Australian small goods from an iconic Australian brand, but the company's own frequently asked questions page quietly confirms. That pork is sometimes sourced from international suppliers in North America and Europe. And the final chapter of this story may be the most alarming of all, because it runs across every single chain simultaneously. Number 8. Superbugs in meat from all 4 major Australian chains. This final issue is not about a single brand. It is not about a single product recall. It is the result of a rigorous, peer-reviewed scientific study conducted by researchers at the University of Canberra on behalf of Animals Australia, and the findings are genuinely extraordinary. Researchers tested 404 separate meat samples purchased directly from Coles, Woolworths, Aldi and IGA across Australia. Every single chain. Not one was excluded. The results: 100% of the bacteria found in the tested samples were resistant to at least one antibiotic, classified by the World Health Organization as critically important for human medicine. 100%. But it gets worse. 12% of the samples contained multi-drug-resistant superbugs, meaning bacteria capable of resisting multiple antibiotics simultaneously. And the researchers found colistin-resistant genes in a number of samples. Colistin is considered the absolute last resort antibiotic for treating the most severe, difficult-to-treat hospital infections. When bacteria develop resistance to colistin, clinical medicine loses one of its final weapons. A parallel Monash University study found that 53% of bacteria found on beef and salmon samples at Australian supermarkets were antibiotic resistant. The researchers noted this was virtually identical to the antibiotic resistance levels found in wastewater, sitting at 58%. How does antibiotic resistance end up in supermarket meat? Because in large-scale, intensive farming operations, antibiotics are frequently administered to animals to prevent disease in crowded conditions, rather than to treat individual sick animals. This constant low-level antibiotic exposure creates the exact selection pressure needed to breed antibiotic-resistant bacterial strains. Those strains then travel up the supply chain, into the processing facility, and into the sealed tray on the supermarket shelf. If this is fresh, quality Australian meat from safe, regulated farms, why are University of Canberra scientists finding colistin-resistant bacteria across every major chain? Because the system that produces most of our cheap mass-market supermarket meat is structurally incompatible with eliminating antibiotic resistance. The branding across every major chain promises safe, high-quality Australian meat from trusted Australian farmers. But the University of Canberra found antibiotic-resistant bacteria across 100% of tested samples from all 4 major chains, including multi-drug-resistant superbugs in 12% of tests. Now step back and look at the full picture we have just built together. This is not 8 separate problems. This is one single, deeply embedded systemic failure, running through every layer of Australia's mass-market meat supply chain simultaneously. The colour of your meat is chemically engineered to be misleading. The weight in your chicken tray contains injected salt water sold at premium protein prices. The premium label on your mince has no legal definition and is not enforced. The free-range chicken brand was found by the federal court to be misleading consumers. The most beloved Australian bacon brand was convicted of selling Danish and Canadian pork as Australian product. A premium artisan small goods brand required an urgent recall for Listeria contamination across 2 states. A major brand quietly sources pork from North America and Europe, while presenting as thoroughly Australian. And antibiotic-resistant superbugs are present in meat samples from every single major chain. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission has taken companies to court. Fines have been paid, recalls have been issued, and then the same products, the same labels, the same marketing language returns to the shelf, and the cycle begins again. The Australian consumer has become the final weakest link in a supply chain that relies on your trust, your time pressure, and your assumption that what is legal is also honest. But you do not have to keep handing your family's health over to this system. Now let us talk about the options that actually deserve your trust. If you want to escape the gas-treated, water-injected, label-deceiving meat system, the single most powerful thing you can do is reconnect with an independent local butcher. Option 1. Your local independent butcher. Independent butchers do not use modified atmosphere packaging with carbon monoxide to make meat look artificially fresh for 3 weeks. They do not run chicken through brine injection machines. They source from local farms and regional wholesalers, and their entire business model depends on a loyal local customer base that will return if the meat is genuinely good. When you buy mince from a local butcher, it is freshly ground that morning. When the color of the meat tells you something about its freshness, you can believe it. Yes, it may cost you a few dollars more per kilogram, but you are paying for the actual product, not for injected water, not for carbon monoxide gas, and not for the marketing of false freedom claims. Option 2, Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals approved chicken. If you continue to buy supermarket chicken, look specifically for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals approved farming scheme logo on the packaging. These approved products require farms to meet independently audited welfare standards, including meaningful space allowances, environmental enrichment, and lighting requirements. This is a scheme with actual third-party verification behind it, unlike the words free to roam, which a federal court found to mean practically nothing. Look for True Organic Chicken or Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals approved lines available through Woolworths and specialty retailers. The price is higher. The standard behind it is real. Option 3, Pork Mark certified products and Batoki Gold. If you buy Australian pork and small goods, the Pork Mark logo is the only way to guarantee the pork inside the packet is genuinely 100% Australian. It is an independently verified certification program run by Australian Pork Limited. Batoki Gold, available at Woolworths, carries Pork Mark certification and is widely regarded as one of the cleanest, most transparent bacon options available at a major chain. For small goods, Barossa Fine Foods in South Australia is frequently cited as an exceptional award-winning alternative with genuine local sourcing transparency. Option 4, Air-chilled chicken. If you are specifically trying to avoid water-injected chicken and still want to shop at a major supermarket, look explicitly for the words air-chilled on the label. Air-chilled chicken is cooled after processing using moving cold air rather than water immersion. It cannot absorb injected brine during the chilling process, and it retains its natural flavor profile. The skin crisps properly. The meat sears correctly. The flavor tastes like actual chicken. It is more expensive, but you are buying chicken and only chicken. Australian food culture has drifted so far from honest food that we have almost completely forgotten what it is supposed to look like. We used to buy a piece of meat, cook it simply, and eat it knowing exactly what it was. Now we buy a sealed tray of chemically treated, gas-flushed, water-injected protein, labeled with marketing words that have no legal meaning, from brands that have been taken to court for the very claims printed on the front of the packet. And because the tray looks clean and the meat looks red and the label says premium, we trust it completely. The system is betting on your trust. It is time to stop giving it away for free. Ask your butcher where their beef comes from. Look for air-chilled on the chicken label. Check for Pork Mark certification when you buy pork, and start treating the word premium on a mince tray as the marketing term with zero legal meaning that it actually is. If this video opened your eyes to what is really happening inside Australia's supermarket meat fridges right now, tap the like button so we can put this information in front of every Australian family that deserves to know. If you want to stay one step ahead of the supply chains, the label tricks, and the industry practices that are being counted on to keep you in the dark, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the more of us who understand this system, the harder it becomes for them to keep running it. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever noticed supermarket chicken releasing an alarming amount of water the moment it hits the pan? Or have you caught a product label that felt like it was telling you something very different from the truth? Tell me your story below. because your experience matters.